Good morning and thank you so much for joining us on this sunny Tuesday. I hope it's sunny where you are. We're just waiting for a few people to join us. So while we wait, feel free to pop in the chat function. Obviously, if we're in a face-to-face event, you would be able to network and meet each other beforehand. So rather than missing out, pop it in the chat function, just introduce yourself, say hello, tell us a bit about your business. Maybe let us know if you've been to the pub or got your hair cut or dyed, anything like that you haven't been able to do for a while. Also make sure that when you send it, you send it to all panelists and attendees so everyone can see who's in the chat and no one misses out. So we'll just give it probably another minute or so and then we'll get started. So yeah, for those of you who've just joined us, feel free to pop in the chat function, say hello, introduce yourself, tell us a bit about your business, or let us know if you went to the pub last night, or if you had your hair cut, or if you've been to the gym. Beth, I don't know if you saw, but some places opened at midnight on Sunday, like pubs
I know.
in certain areas, just so people could go and have a drink. I was like, part of me was like, that's genius, and another part of me was like, that's insane, because our nights at the minute are so cold.
And it's still technically Sunday.
So I think it was like 1 minute past, so midnight. But yeah, I was just like, wow, some people are getting proper thrifty in the lockdown.
Yeah, I haven't heard of anywhere in Norfolk doing that though, have you?
No, not Norfolk. But yeah, if anyone knows of anywhere that opened at 1 minute past midnight, let us know. And if you went, how was it? I mean, I would have wanted like several hot water bottles, loads of blankets, and I'd
One
be
of
like,
those heaters. I'm not going to sit outside if it's not warm.
yeah, and be like, I don't want a cold beer, I want a warm cider or warm hot buttered rum or something like that to keep me going on these chilly nights. Right, I think we'll get started, and then what I can do is chase anyone afterwards. That's a bit late. So thank you so much for joining us. For those of you who don't know, my name is Kayleen Harrington, and I'm the event manager for Norfolk Chambers of Commerce. So before we start, I wanted to let you know, I'm very excited to let you know that the B2B exhibition will hopefully be taking place on Thursday, the 14th of October. The B2B exhibition is Norfolk's largest business-to-business exhibition. It's completely free to attend and attracts hundreds of businesses on the day. B2B is a highlight on the Norfolk events calendar, so I'll pop a link to the event page in the chat shortly. I mean, going to face-to-face events, what a luxury. So managing your third-party spend. We all have to spend money with third parties in our businesses, but the art is to make sure that this money is helping you work towards your business goals and not costing more than it needs to. This introduction to procurement focuses on practical steps on how to get started and improve your supply chain. It's in plain English and easy to follow, so you can get your supply chain powering your business goals. So in this 60-minute webinar, Beth Seeger, independent procurement consultant of Aspaz, will walk through the procurement cycle with you, understanding the different types of external spend with suppliers and strategies of how to work with suppliers to improve your supply chain. So during the presentation, feel free to ask Beth any questions. You can pop those in the Q&A and she'll answer them as she goes along. So yeah, Beth, over to you.
Perfect. Thanks everyone for coming. Oops. Just to get started, if you do want to introduce yourself and say the types of thing that you buy or anything that you want to get out of this webinar, that would be great. So a little about me to start with. I've spent my career in procurement and set up my own consultancy last year for manufacturers and small to medium companies. I'm a chartered procurement professional, and what's really important is obviously making savings, but making sure that they're aligned with what you want to achieve in your business. I've worked mainly with international manufacturers, and it's really important to me to share procurement expertise so that every company can become self-sufficient in procurement, whether you're small or large and can have a whole team of people doing it full time. So I'll go through this quickly because Kayleen has already told you what we're going to walk through today. By the end of it, you'll be able to understand what you're spending your money on and why. You'll be able to put together a plan for improving how you buy different products. And you'll be able to align your suppliers with your business goals and use that to help you save money, which is why we're all here. And on that point, it's really important to understand that every pound that you save in procurement or buying things better and more cost effectively goes directly to your bottom line. So if you compare it to sales, if you make £1,000 worth of extra sales, you'll need to take off the cost of however much it costs you to put those products on the shelf, your staff costs and your taxes. But if you reduce your external spend by £1,000, you don't have to take anything off that. It just immediately goes to your bottom line, which is why I think I would say this because I'm in procurement, but why procurement is so important. So one thing you can do is like think about how much you would have to sell to make £1,000 worth of profit. But if you put that effort into saving money in your supply chain, then the money is there usually a lot faster. But more than that, it's really important to think of your supply chain as furthering your whole business. So lots of us have targets on how much turnover we want or increasing the number of customers and that sort of thing. Growth targets, expanding into new regions, improving reliability of your products and services, developing new products for your customers, buying local, or for example, having a living wage commitment. So if you think about, and if you want to share it in the chat, what your goals are, you can then align your suppliers to help achieve those as well. And it will not only save you money, but also like help your customers in what you want to achieve for them. So task one, because this is very much an action plan for you to be able to go away and do this and save money in your business. And Kayleen will send out to you the document with a plan in it. So it'll have all these tasks written down for you to go and follow up yourself. And if you have any questions on them, just keep popping them in because it is really supposed to be, it's all unique to you, but you can all follow the same steps. So before you start on saving money, think about what your business is trying to achieve in the next 5 years and the key values that are important to you. So like a living wage commitment is not necessarily a business goal, but it's your ethos of your business. And another thing in that could be environmental goals or reducing the amount to landfill, anything along those lines. And your supply chain really allows you to put your money where your mouth is in that sense and show to your customers like it's not just me saying that I care about the environment, like my whole supply chain is zero to waste to landfill, or my whole supply chain pays a living wage, or whatever it is that you and your customers care about. Once you have those goals, you can consider how your suppliers could help you achieve them. So if one of your goals was to expand out of East Anglia into a different county or into a different country, how can your suppliers help you with that? Do they have bases over there, or can you expand together? Other things might be delivering faster to your customers. If you're a distributor or you sell goods, then can your suppliers deliver directly to them, or can they get to you faster so you can then ship them out? All of those types of things that you want to achieve, your suppliers should be helping you do that. It shouldn't just be dead money that goes to them and you're like, oh, why does it cost so much? And it's really important where you can to have suppliers that share your values so that you can talk about these things and make sure that your customers are getting what they want, which is ultimately why we're all in business. Are there any questions up to now, or any introductions that we want to talk about?
No questions. I can do some introductions. Hang on while I scroll up. So we've got Chris Cliff, Director of CJC Procurement. He says, no pressure, Beth, smiley face, joking, fully supporting you and this very important session for all. Morning, Stephen. I'm not going to attempt to say your surname. I'm sorry, I'm really bad at this sort of thing and I don't want to mispronounce it. He's the director and owner of Dad's Boats, which I love. I bet you've been very busy now that we're starting to open up. Morning, my name is Jake. I am the depot supervisor for a builder's merchant at Rhino Building Supplies. And then the final one, Doreen from Zenith Bookkeeping. Looking forward to learning more about third-party spend.
Cool. Hi everyone, thanks for joining. So once we've defined our goals and what we're looking to achieve, we can then start looking at what we're spending our money on and really understanding why we spend our money on those things, because sometimes in business we lose focus and it's like, oh, because we always do that, and it's only once we take a step back that's like, oh, hang on a minute, like £10,000 a year goes on to stationery or something. And when you look at what you've spent your money on, say over the past year, you'll probably be overwhelmed by quite how long that list is. I know I certainly am when in my job and I do this full time. And it's important to understand that you can, there's no one size fits all for everything on that list. So really we want to break that down into manageable chunks of the goods and services that we buy, and then deal with them separately to make sure that we get the most value from each of those types of goods and services. And there are several ways to do this, and we talk about categorising spend in procurement quite a lot, which I'll go into in a minute, but arguably the most important is defining your direct and indirect goods and services. So a lot of you will probably understand this already, but I just wanted to go through it as an example in case anyone wanted to freshen up. So I use the example of a bike shop, and direct goods are things that directly impact your customer. So things that they are consciously aware of buying from you. It's probably the easiest way I find to think about it. So in our bike shop, we sell bikes, we sell parts for those bikes, any accessories like lights and helmets, the display racks that we put them on in our bike shop, and the marketing materials. That's what I would include in my direct goods for the customers. Indirect goods are things that we have to buy, but our customer is not necessarily aware of them, or not consciously thinking like, oh, I'm going to my bike shop and I'm buying a new bike. They don't think about the fact that will need tools for putting those bikes together for them. Similarly, the tea and coffee for our team, phones and internet connections, uniforms, shop cleaning services, CCTV and security services. All those things are our indirect spend. That's not to say they're not important to our business, but we can deal with them slightly differently because the throughput to our customers, that link is sort of broken. So we can usually think more about price and lowering the prices on those things and keeping the quality and delivery times with our direct goods. And you can already see in these lists that I've started categorizing into groups of spend. So for example, on bikes, we'll probably buy, 30 different frames of bikes from 4 different manufacturers. And there might be some distributors that we use as well. So there's different suppliers in there. And if we looked at a list of what we are, just a long list of what we've spent money on, then there'd probably be hundreds of individual line items, but we can group those all in together as full bikes. Similarly, in bike parts, there'll be hundreds or thousands of different bike parts that we've used, but we probably have a smaller number of suppliers that we can go to for those. So we can group them all together and think about them as one type of goods that we buy. And this way it allows us to really think about what we want from those goods or services. So do we want next day delivery? Then what type of quality are we looking for? So it also helps immediately highlight how much we're spending on those types of goods and services. So for example, and this is my actual bank account statement. It's not very much because it's only I call it my spending money, but obviously we weren't able to do anything in September and October. But on this list that the bank kindly categorizes what I spend, so I can immediately look at it and say, if I was saving money, well, I spent £187 on restaurants. So could I cut down on eating out? Or are there cheaper restaurants to go to? So you can have those same conversations about the categories of goods and services that you're buying from. And maybe target the higher spend ones immediately, or target the ones where you think, I didn't realize that I spent that much on that, or I don't know why I should be spending so much of my business's money on those things. So this is task 2, putting everything that you buy into different, essentially, buckets of spend. And those, it's really like zooming out from the individual items and the individual suppliers and saying, I spend £500,000 on bikes, so, but it doesn't necessarily matter that 3/4 of it was with one supplier and the rest was with another. You can sort of think how to get the best out of the whole amount of your bike spend. So what is it you're buying? Is it a direct or indirect good? And can they be grouped together to provide a basket of goods, which we'll use later for deciding whether you want to produce a tender or you want to work with the supplier more closely on reducing waste to save money, those kinds of things. So once you've got your list of categories of spend, we're then going to think of what's truly important to you. So what are your core products and services that you buy, and what isn't, what are the things that you have to buy but aren't so important about exactly the manufacturer or exactly how long it takes to get to you. So when you're thinking about the importance of things, really focusing on what's important to your customers. So bikes would obviously be really important to our customers in those situations, but the amount of money that we spend on cleaners probably isn't, or the type of stationery we buy isn't going to be important to our customers. And those are the things where we can target for saving money in a kind of more conventional way on driving the cost down. We'll talk about what we can do with the things that are important to our customers slightly later on. Of these categories of spend, how do we define quality? Like, what does quality mean to us on those things? And what is it that we want to buy, but we don't want to spend any of our time on because we're all busy. So we don't want to mess around calling for quotes or chasing up late deliveries. So what are the items where you think, I just want to go on a website, order it, and it turns up the next day? And when you put those qualities onto the categories, you can then target them for cost saving and the different approach you can take to them. Hopefully that makes sense to everyone. But if you've got any questions, please put them in the Q&A. So next is the market analysis. And this is probably the trickiest bit of what I'm going to talk to you about. And why I started on, one of the reasons why I say to categorize the types of goods and services you buy is because the marketplace for buying bikes is going to be very different to the marketplace for buying security services. So by dividing up what you've spent, you can really think about how important you are as a customer and what you can do to drive those costs down. And this little model on the left is called Porter's 5 Forces. So you can look that up afterwards if you're the type of person that really likes doing this kind of thing. Then there's loads of information on how to kind of do the market analysis around Porter's 5 Forces, but I'll take you through it quickly now. So if we start at the top with buyer power, when we talk about power in this, we're thinking, how can you affect the price essentially of what you're buying? So if the buyer power, if there's not very many buyers then of the different goods and services, then you can use your ability in that situation to say, hang on a minute, you're charging me too much. Let's knock those prices down a bit. So that would be if it's easy for you to switch to someone else. So if there's lots and lots of suppliers, take our security services, for example, there's lots of security companies out there. So if they weren't performing how you wanted them to perform, then you can just switch to someone else. And that puts a lot of power in you as a customer. And conversely, at the bottom, we've got supplier power. So say, for example, on our bikes, we might have customers that really want rally bikes and what's my bike now? Giant, and like these powerful manufacturers where you have to have those manufacturers in your shop and you've got no real choice to switch to something else. So that puts more power with the suppliers because they can dictate how much their goods cost. A really good example is Apple. So lots of people will say that no one else does what Apple do, so they can command a higher price. And you'll notice they don't really have sales, they don't really reduce their price for any distributors. The price is what it is. And that's because they've got a lot of power from their brand to be able to dictate their marketplace. Another thing on the left here is the threat of new entrants. So this is how easy is it for a new company to come in that can then supply you. So it's easier, arguably, for a distributor to set themselves up than it is for a manufacturer, because the manufacturer will have to invest in lots of capital equipment, they'll have to get their brand out there, and so you can think more about, well, are there going to be new companies, new innovations that I can switch to, or that are going to drive the price down of my existing suppliers? Conversely to that is the threat of substitutes. So a substitute product is, can you use something different that does the same job? So can you switch to an own brand, for example? And that could save you a lot of money if you're currently buying a branded product. Stationery is a really obvious one on this. Like, do you need to buy Bic pens? Can you just buy the own brand ones? Do you need to buy a Sharpie when any permanent marker will do? And own brands could be half the price or less. And those things can really show you where you can start saving money on what you're spending. And then in the middle is all the competitive rivalry. So how does that all mix together? And what is your place in it? Is the easiest way to describe that. So it sounds really complicated, but once you sit down and look at what you spent money on, you can really just see, you know your local market, so you can think about how big those companies are and how much you spend with them to be how much of a big customer you are. So that's the third task. So we've looked at our business goals, we've looked at what we spend and how we categorize those things into groups. So then as part of those groups, what is that market like? What is the chance of me being able to save money in it? Are there lots of suppliers so I could just send a tender out, which we'll talk about in a minute, and get the best price? Or are there few suppliers, so actually I need to be thinking a bit more cleverly about how I buy it and how I talk to the suppliers of that category of spend. And at the Norfolk Chamber, we probably feel like a small customer that will never spend a huge amount of money with these large companies, but you don't actually have to spend a lot to be a valuable customer. So in your own business, are your ideal customers solely the people who spend the most, or are there other factors that you care about? And probably your suppliers are doing the same. So yes, everyone loves like the customers who spend hundreds of thousands of pounds, but they might also like the customers that pay on time, the customers that use the latest products. So instead of buying lots of legacy stuff, they're always up to date, buying the latest thing, the thing that they probably care the most about. They might, well, there's lots of things they might care about regionally where you're located. They might want to work with people that share the same values that they do. So don't feel like you can't do anything if you're up against a big company, or you think that maybe you don't spend that much, because it's likely that your suppliers still care about your business. Does anyone have any questions?
We've just had one pop in from Stephen saying, please can I verbally ask a question? So bear with me, Stephen, while I give you permission. So Stephen, you should have, yep, you've now unmuted yourself, so you should be able to ask a question.
Okay, thank you very much. It's just that there would be quite a lot to type out and I'm not very good at typing.
It's fine.
We're a microscopic company and we're manufacturing. There's only me basically, and I outsource everything. Our product is unique and I use several key specialist suppliers and we like to try and keep it local. So I have very few options. Most of my, well, all the key suppliers have much bigger clients who are much more important. And things have gone fairly well so far because, as you were just saying about, you know, if you pay on time and you know, generally operate ethically, your suppliers like you. But I've had a real problem recently with one of them. But the thing is, because it's a unique product, we've developed the product together, what they contribute to it over the last 5 years. And so some of how to make things is in their domain. And if I were to want to switch to someone else, I have to start again from the beginning in developing how the new person will do it. And I mean, have you got any advice on how I should go about it other than talking to the supplier that I had the problems with, which I have already done?
Yeah, thanks for the question. It's probably the hardest one you could have asked. So yeah, right now I'm doing an interim contract with a global pharmaceutical company, and we have that a lot. And we can't switch to anyone else because the validation and things and the traceability will be so hard to then just the cost of change like you're talking about is just really difficult. So is it a performance issue that they're not performing very well, or is it just price?
No, it's not price, it's performance. You know, things having been fine for a while, you know, this last set of parts that we had were just, you know, it was terrible. So many mistakes, and I spent a lot of money driving around trying to fight fires. Yeah.
So it unfortunately does come down to still trying to communicate with them. So thinking about trying to implement service level agreements and key performance indicators, and trying to get to the best person to talk to in the organization, because there will be eventually someone who does care, and it might not be the account manager that you're initially given.
Right.
Another thing is to it's just like making expectations clear, because I found that most of the time when a supplier is not performing well, even though I bang on about it to them, it's like they haven't realized what it is that's important to us. So they didn't know that, for example, the lead time was the critical thing to me. So it's going almost back to square one and setting the expectations of what it is that you need. Right. And longer term, the only way to do it is investing in trying to find an alternative source, even if it's just the threat. So you let the current supplier know that you are en route to approving someone else, because that then increases your leverage a bit with them. If they know that you can switch.
Thanks.
But it's probably the hardest situation to be in, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you. Right, neat. I'll figure out how to. There we go. And then we've also got a question from Doreen saying, how do you position yourself in the market? Is this part of the PESTLE?
Yeah, so PESTLE is another way of doing it as opposed to the Porter's 5 forces that you do. So you can, if you're more familiar with PESTLE, you can do it that way. One thing that I normally look at is on if they're large enough to do a full company's house accounts file, then I have a look at how much they turn over so that I can see, am I a big customer or a small customer? And just thinking about how many other people you think buy their services. Do they market to lots and lots of companies, or actually in their factory do they have a very small number of customers? Yeah, so that's kind of how I would go about positioning myself. Hopefully that helps.
Yes, she said, thank you, that's great.
Thanks. Improving how you buy. So now we're moving on to what you can actually do now you've gathered all that information. And it's often in procurement, we're put as these figures who only care about getting the lowest price possible. And it's not the case, I promise. Sometimes you will want to choose a more expensive product or services. So some of the reasons you might want to do that is you care about next day, or you want to use a local supplier, or you want a longer warranty. And this is where we get into the question of price versus value. So how much the price tag is. So if something is I'm always the worst at like examples coming right to my head. But on, for example, cleaning services that we talked about, you might be able to get the cheapest supplier. So we'll go to one of the huge FM companies and they'll have a really small margin and they'll give you a great price. But alternatively, if you spent a little bit more, you might have a local supplier who pays their staff more, and that means their staff stay with them longer and they're better at what they do because they get more training. And so that quality is reflected within the price tag, and that's where we talk about value. So your price might be higher, but actually it's worth a lot more. And understanding what you want to get out of the price tag, so what the value of that service or product is to you, is really important, so you don't end up just going for the cheapest supplier who ends up causing you a load of problems because it's not actually what you want. So this is our procurement cycle, and it's not too important to keep in the front of your mind, but I just wanted to demonstrate it here so that you can understand that each stage that we go through when we buy something or we work long term with a supplier is really important to driving the price down. So for example, at the top here, we start with defining the need. So that's where I just talked about price versus value. What is it that we need? Do we need the highest spec to sell to our customers? Or do we actually need the cheapest thing because actually it's pens and we don't really care. So defining that need means you can make sure you're not overspending on something that you don't need, and you're not underspending and spending a lot of time going, well, this breaks all the time, so why am I wasting my time on something that's broken? Similarly, if we look at warehouse management, do you want to bulk buy something for a lower price, or do you want a warehouse space empty for something that is more valuable to you? And normally those are quite opposing. So you can either buy things in bulk, or you can have low amounts of inventory in your warehouse. And I know the fashionable thing, at least before the pandemic, was to have lean supply chains and just in time. And you hear about like the car manufacturers who just desperately want to have nothing on the shelf, but usually you can do one or the other. And here in tender process, contract awards, strategy development, we're thinking about how we negotiate with our suppliers. So it's just being conscious about what you're doing when you interact with your suppliers, and making sure that each interaction is adding value to you and furthering your business goals, rather than just wasting your time or spending too much on something that's not important to you. So tendering sounds really scary, sounds like something the public sector do with the low rules, but actually it's just the process of asking for bunching a load of goods or services together and asking a few companies to price for it at the same time. And adding that competition means that your suppliers are thinking that they've got to improve their prices so that you award the business to them and not someone else. And it also opens you up to suppliers that you might not have used before. So, and without any commitment to buy from them, you can check their prices, you can talk to them about the kind of services they offer, and really get a feel for how well you could work together. Because a tender, you can send the information, and I'll talk about what you need in a minute, but you can use the time to just get to know how they work. And you consolidate those groups of items, so all your stationery or all your PPE, and to quote at the same time. And on that list of items, you just need like a description of what it is that you're buying. And it could be a list of, if we look at stationery, pens, papers, A3 papers, envelopes, each one of those listed out, the quantities that you expect to buy. And it's important to be realistic in that. So you don't want to overstate what you think you're going to buy just to get a lower price, because you get found out and that's really awkward. And then you want to put in how you define quality and good service. So is good service 24-hour turnaround and delivery, or is quality a specific manufacturer? And you can put that in, and the suppliers that you invite will then come back to you, hopefully with very good prices. You don't need to be too worried about what information you're putting in. Obviously, you don't want to share anything that's confidential to the suppliers that you currently use, but the only bad thing that happens if you put incorrect information in, or it turns out you haven't put enough information in, is that the suppliers come back to you with questions. And as you do it more, you start to realise what it is they ask and how you can then factor that in the next time you do it. And on price and in your tender, you can allow your supplier to think about the value aspect. So on our price versus value, what is it that they can offer if their price is higher, why is that? So it could be quality that lasts longer. So in our bike shop, they could offer a higher price bike frame because it would last 10 years instead of 5 years. Is good performance something that is worth paying more for? Because I'm sure we've all had experiences like Stephen of suppliers that are just really frustrating to work with, and how long that takes to try and get it right. Other things, vending machines, so it's a lot easier to get the items. Can you order online? Vendor managed inventory, which is where the supplier puts stock in your warehouse, but it's free to you until you use it. And can they reduce the amount of waste? So if stuff comes to you with a lot of packaging and you have to pay to get rid of that packaging, then that's all built into their price. So that was very quick, but putting a tender together would be your task 4. So what goods or services could be grouped together for you to send out as a list to multiple suppliers and get the price? What will you value more than the actual price tag? How would you define quality? Because that's really important for the supplier to understand, is the type of service that you are expecting to receive. And then select the one that best suits what you're looking for. It doesn't have to be the cheapest. No one in the list, the group of suppliers that you send this tender to, should expect you to choose just the cheapest. You, as well as just the added value within the price tag, sometimes, and you could never do this in the public sector, but like you get a feeling with a supplier and you just think you can't work with them, then don't. Whether they're the cheapest or not, remember what's important to you and your customers. And the last bit of this presentation is about, you could have looked at the categories that you buy and the suppliers that you work with and decided that you're not going to change so doing a tender isn't worthwhile because you're not going to switch to someone else. You might want to stay because you really like working with them, or you can't change. And you can still save money by working with those current suppliers. You don't have to go and change them. And this is where we come on to the 7 wastes. So again, you'll be able to look this up on the internet and find out more information if it's relevant to you. But if I go through them briefly, so inventory, keeping stock on your shelf, is using your resources. So not only literal physical space, but also the amount of money you've spent on that stock that you're not then using to further any other business goals. Defects, so what is coming to you broken that you can't actually send on to your customers. Motion, so are you moving things around a lot? These were very much designed for manufacturing. So if you're a services business, you might find it harder to link all of these to your business, but it's still important to think about. Overproduction, so you've got then again more stock sitting on the shelf that may eventually go to waste if they've got like a lifespan. Over processing, which is similar to our question on quality. So is it too good for what you need? So are you paying too much and your customers actually don't care about those things that are the better quality? waiting. So you standing around waiting, for example, if you are a factory and your line goes down and you're waiting for a spare part and it takes forever, that's costing you money. And then transport. So are you shipping things, paying to ship things to you in your warehouse and back out to your customer? Is there a way, if you're in distribution, to transport direct to your customer from the supplier? Those kinds of things. So the final task would be getting closer with those suppliers that you know you want to carry on working with. So talking to them and being really open about what it is you want to achieve. Obviously, there's confidential things that you don't want to talk about, but being as honest as you can helps the supplier then do the same. So you might find that actually you're working towards the same goal. So if we think about the waste reduction, like they probably want to do that as well. They just haven't had a customer willing to take the time to talk to them about it and how it would change how they supply you. Again, you don't need to spend mega money to be a valuable customer, hopefully. So that's the end of what I had. So I know it was a lot to take in, but hopefully once you sit down and just start thinking about those things, it's actually not too long or complex a subject matter. And Kayleen will be sending out the slides and the procurement plan for you to help you work through those things.
Thank you so much. You can breathe now. Big sigh of relief.
I saw the time and I was like, oh my God, I'm not near the end.
No, you're fine. We've got 8 minutes left. So yeah, thank you so much. I just want to check before we close if you've got any more questions or whether you're all happy. So Chris says, the most effective tactic any business can take to make themselves more attractive as a customer is pay their invoices on time. Most definitely. And then Doreen has said, thank you, that was excellent, really helpful. And I mean, I must admit, you have put procurement in a language that I fully understand.
Oh, good.
Which is what we love. So Christine has said, will a recording be available? I missed some of the talk as a supplier called. Yes, the recording will be available. Just bear with me because I'm catching up with some previous ones. But as soon as it is, I will send it out. But you will get a copy of the presentation this afternoon, along with the handout that Beth kindly mentioned. And in the chat, Jake says, thank you very much, very helpful. Perfect. Well, I'm so glad that everyone found that useful. Again, if you've got any questions, you've got a copy of Beth's details here, so you can email her or call her. That's not a problem whatsoever. So Beth, I don't know if you want a final farewell before we end the session.
No, just thanks everyone for showing, and if you want to connect on LinkedIn, then it's just Beth Seeger and I work at Espace. And yeah, it'd be great to talk to you. Reach out if you have any procurement questions or any clarification.
Thank you. We've had a couple more chats come in. So Graham says, very interesting, thank you. Good to know that Dad's boats are still doing well. Love that. And Doreen says, Beth, you presented that really well, not easy, and lots of explanation marks.
I'm not a natural speaker, so thanks everyone for putting up with it.
It's fine, you're knowledgeable, and I think because you put it in easy examples, like I loved when you showed the categories of your bank statement, and at the top was restaurants, because for me, food is number one for me. So I was like, yeah, I could see some what's the word? Some, not comparisons.
Similarities?
Yes, that's the right word. So I was like, I'm glad it's not just me. I do love food, I'm not gonna lie. Perfect. Well, thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day. I hope the sun is shining where you are. And yeah, fingers crossed we will see you soon at one of our virtual events, or maybe one of our face-to-face events, which are coming up from mid-June onwards. So yeah, I'll share a link in the post-event email so you can have a look what's coming up. So yeah, enjoy the rest of your day and see you all later. Bye.
Bye.